Welcome to the section 5, validate scope. Are you ready? Let's move on. This section focuses on the validate scope process, which is essential for ensuring that project deliverables meet customer or stakeholder acceptance criteria. Validation of scope is critical to confirm that the work done aligns with project requirements. Now this is very important. After you've done your work, it needs to be validated, alright, to ensure that you didn't go south, but what you did is in perfect alignment with the requirements of the stakeholders. Okay, so by the end of this section, you should be able to understand the purpose of the validate scope process, identify the inputs, tools and techniques, as well as the outputs of the process. Lastly, recognize the importance of validating scope for project success. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the meat of the matter. Now, what is the purpose of the validate scope? The validate scope process aims to formally verify that project deliverables meet acceptance criteria defined during project planning. Okay, so it helps you to verify that the deliverables from the phases or the parts of your project actually meet with the acceptance criteria you've already defined during the planning process. Now, what are the inputs in this particular process, the validate scope? Firstly, you have your project management plan, which includes the scope baseline, which contains the project scope statement, WBS and WBS dictionary. Okay. Requirements documentation contains documented requirements for the project. Requirement traceability matrix links requirements to their original tracks and status. Now this is very critical because we've already established that we need to be conversant with our stakeholders. Okay, so most times when you've gathered a lot of data, which we call requirements from stakeholders, sometimes you may have things mixed up. Okay, so in such a case, this requirements traceability matrix becomes very handy. When you have a list of requirements, it helps you to be able to trace which stakeholder has which requirements, and it also guides you in your communication with that particular stakeholders, all right, to be able to guide them properly and manage their requirements and expectations throughout the course of the project. It makes things easier for you as a project manager, as a matter of fact. Okay, next is verify deliverables. These are deliverables that have been inspected and confirmed as meeting acceptance criteria. Okay, so when you have deliverables in each phase of a project, they need to be able to meet the acceptance criteria. Work performance data. This is data about the project's progress and performance. Okay, so those are the inputs in the validate scope process. Now let's look at the tools and techniques. Firstly, you have inspection. This is the process of reviewing deliverables to ensure they meet acceptance criteria. So at each point in time, when you have deliverables or when you have results or an outcome for your project, you should ensure that it has met with what? The acceptance criteria. If it do not meet the acceptance criteria, then it's more or less a waste of time and resources. Okay, Group decision making, collaboration among stakeholders to make decisions about deliverable acceptance. Okay, and then finally you have decision making, which includes determining whether a deliverable is acceptable or not. And of course, if you've been thorough in your monitoring and controlling throughout the process, definitely the deliverable will be meeting the acceptance criteria. Okay, all right, so these are the things that make up the tools and technique. Let's take a look at the output now. So what are the outputs of this process, the validate scope process? Firstly, you have accepted deliverables. Yeah, and these include the deliverables that met acceptance criteria and are approved by stakeholders. Okay, so deliverable simply means the products, all right, that your project has actually produced, the outcomes that it has actually produced, the systems, the services, documents, whatever it is, okay, that it has produced. So it's now for the stakeholders to now accept it, having considered every aspect of it, that yes, okay, it actually meets their acceptance criteria, it meets their requirement, it's solving their problem, it meets their needs, and then they can give you a thumbs up and an approval. And then change requests. If deliverables do not meet criteria, change requests may be necessary to address the deficiency. Okay, so when you have deliverables that don't meet the acceptance criteria, then a change request becomes very critical. Okay, work performance information, data on deliverable validation that can impact on project processes, data on deliverable validation that can impact other project processes. Okay, and lastly, project document updates. So this includes updates to project document based on validation outcome. Validation outcomes. Okay, so those are the bunch of outputs from the validate scope process. Alright, so what are the key takeaways that you're going home with from this section? The validate scope process involves confirming that project deliverables meet the specified requirements and are accepted by stakeholders. This ensures that the project remains on track and that any necessary changes are properly documented and managed. Okay? The key tools used are inspection and product testing, and the primary output is what? Accepted deliverables. Okay, calm down now. Dear project manager, I know your deliverables have been accepted, your stakeholders are happy. Calm down, be calming down, okay? Alright, so while you go to celebrate, I'll catch you in the next section. Cheers.